Now, one of the groups that has lobbied hard for passage of Senate Bill 6346, the millionaires tax, if you will, which supporters call it as, opponents say it's an income tax that they believe will eventually be an income tax on all levels of income earned in the state. Um, they're touting the benefits, this group is, of those who will get the redistribution of wealth. There are a lot of working families tax credit extensions. There's some benefit in business and occupation tax breaks for some levels of small business. There's some sales tax exemptions for hygiene products, deodorant, diapers, some of those types of things where some folks do stand to gain from the income tax if it ends up being implemented. Now, Annie Kuklik is policy and research advisor for the Economic Opportunity Institute, or EOI, as I'll refer to them for savage of time. They're a Seattle based think tank that has lobbied quite a bit for progressive revenue options and certainly was behind the income tax from day one as it moved through the legislative session in Olympia this year. And I got a chance to speak with her late on Wednesday, and she told me that the new income tax on millionaires, from their perspective, is really about correcting Washington's regressive tax code.
Washington has the second most regressive tax code. I'm sure that you've heard this many times. This means that the poorest amongst us are paying the highest percentage of their income towards taxes. Regressive really just has to do with that like downward trend. So yeah, this is the first step. It's a small step. It's a historic step towards rebalancing the regressive tax code that we have by asking the wealthy, the very wealthy, the top 1% of Washingtonians to pay a little bit more so that people in the bottom 95th percentile of income earners can pay a little less.
Now, Republican Representative Travis Couture of Allen, again, he is the leading GOP budget writer and for the House, and he's familiar with some of the reports from EOI about their benefits from the coming income tax should it hold up in the courts, or again, if voters choose not to reject it, although they have rejected it at least 9 times in the past when it's come to the ballot. So here's what Representative Couture had to say.
I did read their report and some of the scenarios that they cherry picked to try to make it look as good as it possibly could. And then some just misdirection and disinformation, claiming that you're the average family or whatever their cherry picked family of a single mom and two toddlers or something like that was going to save like $30,000 a year. And if you extrapolate that across like all of the like people in the state of Washington, that would be more than our state budget. And so the math doesn't really math for some of their claims, and part of it is because they're not just talking about what's in the income tax bill, but they're talking about what's not in the income tax bill, like Apple Health for Kids, Medicaid, right? And childcare subsidies. But as we already know, those things already exist. And kids are already qualified for them. And so trying to claim savings from an income tax bill that one didn't even have those policy items attached to it at all, but two already exist is completely disingenuous. That's number one. But at the same time, like Republicans, for example, supported, bolstering the working families tax credit. It's something that the Republican caucus has pushed for years and ignored by the majority party in Olympia until just this year. And as a matter of fact, I funded the working families tax credit not through new taxes in my budget framework that I released before the Democrats and the governor back in December through the Climate Commitment Act because that is a very grifty, a program that we're paying for, DEI studies in Africa and drum circles and all sorts of stuff for environmental justice. It's not actually doing anything to lessen the carbon impact we have in our society, but it is hammering Washingtonians with the carbon tax on gas, which is the most regressive tax that we have, bar none. So turning that back around into tax credits for working families seemed like a good move to do for us, but I didn't need to raise holy hell with an income tax to fund the working families tax credit. So it's not that we're against the working families tax credit or some of the, mild expansions of it. We're against wrecking our economy and dousing gasoline and becoming an arsonist of our own economy in order to pay for it.
Now, the Economic Opportunity Institute says that families who will get help from the expansion of the working families tax credit will be among the biggest beneficiaries of the income tax once it is implemented, because households that were previously ineligible for the working families tax credit may now be eligible for tax refunds of between $335 a year all the way up to $1,330 a year, and that is according to an FAQ, frequently asked questions from Washington Senate Democrats. Now, the new income tax will, in fact, broaden eligibility for the credit to, they estimate, another 460,000 Washington households. Right now, there are about 350,000 Washington households who take advantage of the working families tax credit. So, I'll show you here, according again to the information put up by Senate Democrats, it extends the eligibility to every family earning at or below the state's what they call need standard, which is a monthly income threshold based on family size that is considered reasonable for a family to pay their bills and other expenses. And they say, for example, a family of four with an income up to $9,579 a month, not a bad income, or an individual with an income tax up to $3,816 would be eligible for the expanded working families tax credit under the income tax. Now, Representative Couture, in our interview, he pointed out that Republicans also offered an expansion of the working families tax credit, but without any new taxes. His proposal was to fund the expansion of this tax credit by using some of the Climate Commitment Act revenues, the CCA revenues. He calls it a grifty program that we're all paying for. In some cases, they've shown that some of the money is being used for diversity, equity, inclusion studies. Some money has gone to what he called drum circles, all sorts of stuff for environmental justice, as opposed to programs that really do prove there is a benefit to the environment, because that's what all the CCA funds were sold as going to provide for all of us. Um, so he says, why not use the CCA money to benefit working families and give them a tax credit there, since it's the working families who are paying so much more in gas taxes at the pump because of the CCA. He presses that Washingtonians, I should say, are still reeling, remember, from last year's record tax increases.
Can we just not forget for a second that literally last year we passed the largest tax increases in state history? All of them regressive. B&O, sales, you name it. Fees, Discover Pass fees. We taxed the joy right out of the state of Washington. And this is kind of, to me, it's like the Democrats have they've robbed us blind, and then they give us like $1 back and ask us to be grateful for it. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, whatever tax relief, even in the best case scenario of what is in this income tax, doesn't even pales in comparison to the $13 billion plus that they just raised on us the year before. And so I just think it's crazy. I think that if economics was water and Democrats were in a boat, they couldn't fall out of the boat and find it. I mean, it's just nuts. We're torching our economy right now, and it is like a five-alarm fire.
So obviously, anyone impacted on either side of the fight over the income tax is invested in this. I remind you, we have Brian Haywood and Let's Go Washington, who have an April 30th date with the state Supreme Court to have arguments as they're trying to get the referendum and their push for the Secretary of State to allow them to proceed with the referendum, which right now they are precluded from doing because the bill had an emergency clause attached, which basically made it referendum proof. So they're fighting that on April 30th. In addition, Let's Go Washington is also working on a couple of initiatives, likely one that goes directly to the legislature and one that goes directly to voters, probably for the ballot later this year if they're able to pull that off and get enough signatures. So there are a lot of different avenues moving forward, as well as the legal challenge that I mentioned as we opened here today in Klickitat County Superior Court.